Well, welcome to today's live vital update. I've got Sarah in the house with me today. How you doing, Sarah?
I am good. Ready for this hot wave or heat wave to pass on by because it is getting brutal.
I have a picnic table sitting in my front yard that the ends have come up. My wife said, "What happened? Did you drop something on the picnic table?" I said, "No, that is the sun scorching that table, warping it. It is so hot." But we're inside. We're cool in the studio today, and excited to be here today. Today we've got a great vlog for folks. I believe that people are going to really get a lot out of what we're going to cover today. And so today we are actually going to be speaking with none other than Jessica Gibson Kendrick from Counseling and Recovery Guidance. We are so happy to have you with us, Jessica. Today is a really important, I think, conversation we're going to have about the great services you guys provide. So why don't you introduce who your company is? Tell us a little bit about yourself. We thank you for joining us today on the Vital Podcast.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really grateful, that I was asked to participate in this and get to talk about something that I'm very passionate about. And I get to work with a team of people that are also just as passionate about what we do. My name is Jessica Gibson Kendrick. I'm a licensed professional counselor supervisor with a private practice here in Lafayette. There are three of us that own this group together. With me is Rebecca Dogereau and Melissa Cavanaugh. And then there are 7 other clinicians that work with us that make up our practice. We have an office in the Lafayette area, so it's on Camellia. Then we also have a new office that's in Youngsville too that we're pretty excited about. So if I had to give you maybe this global statement about what we do, we work with families affected by addiction. And so, not all of our phone calls that we receive are about addiction. So we can work with a lot of different presenting concerns. But primarily, it was important to us that all of the clinicians that work in our group are able to understand what addiction is, what it's not, and how it affects the family members. So it's not the only thing that we talk about, but it is something that's very, very important. I've come to learn through personal experiences and then in the work that I do that you either are that person that struggles with substances or you love that person who struggles with substances. And I just don't see that many degrees of difference in that anymore. As a counseling practice, we work with children as young as about 3 or 4 years old. We have several play therapists on staff all the way through adulthood too. So we'll work with the family unit. We'll work with the individuals. We'll work with couples together. So we want to be able to meet the needs of the entire family.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool just to see the focus in addiction because I don't know. I mean, I've been in therapy myself, and I just don't feel like I've seen it marketed or seen it on the outside. So it's cool to see you guys moving into that realm and having it so close to home. And the Youngsville location is relatively new, so congratulations on the expansion. But how long have you had Counseling and Recovery Guidance?
So we opened the doors for Counseling and Recovery Guidance in October of 2019. I was in private practice by myself for several years. Rebecca Dogereau was by herself for a couple of years. Melissa Cavanaugh was also in private practice by herself. And the other clinicians that work with us, we were kind of all in our own unique but individual journeys, learning that we sort of see this field the same way. We always see life kind of the same way. And so we were referring a lot to each other and calling each other often for consults. And we just decided, Melissa and I, in October of 2019, hey, how about we just get some office space together and we kind of team up, right? And then it began to grow from there.
That's incredible. That's incredible, Jessica. Counseling has always been important and really understated. Really, almost there's been a stigma to engage in, but I think the times have changed and people more than ever understand the value, not only the importance, but the necessity of having a therapist that you can communicate with, work through life issues with. But COVID, it seems like it turned up the volume on it and really brought it to the forefront. I guess if there's anything positive that's come out this season is people's recognition of that need. How has COVID impacted your business? And have you seen that there has been a greater awareness in a sense that, hey, I need to talk to someone?
Well, definitely. So, in the beginning, I think we all experienced this, the very early weeks of COVID, we were sort of all gung-ho willing in this adjustment phase and really enjoying the kind of the break from our normal lives. And while there were a lot of struggles going with this, I think a lot of people just sort of had an opportunity to take a big exhale, right? Like I get to stay home for a little while. And that little while started to turn into a whole lot longer. And we started to see not only, these maybe like the first effects of COVID, the actual illness of it is a lot. It's a tragedy, and it causes a lot of stress and anxiety and depression. We had to learn a new way to deal with this pandemic that we're all of a sudden living in. This generation that we're in, we've never really dealt with something like this, and so it's very new way of being, and we're adjusting. Then as it continued to go on, you start to see more of what I think has been dubbed these secondary effects of the COVID pandemic. And I think what's meant by that statement is the effects that we're seeing on mental health and relationships as it begins to kind of trickle through the community. We did get busier, and that's an interesting place to be in a field like this. You want people to be well and be healthy. But we got busier, and when we're busy, and substance abuse treatment centers, mental health hospitals are busier, then that means that people are struggling. So we were able to stay open. We made lots of modifications so that we could stay open and do things safely. All of our clinicians are trained in telehealth, and so we've always offered telehealth, but that became a very big focus when we went into the COVID pandemic. So we did offer telehealth. We did take a lot of precautions to be able to still see people in person when that was appropriate, or even just to be able to walk and talk with a client, to get outside and take a walk. If we needed to distance from each other a little bit and kind of walk around some of the parks in our area, have a conversation about what was going on, that became extremely valuable to a lot of people to be able to maintain the connection with another person. I think, personally, I know connection is important, but I didn't realize how important that connection to other human beings really is until we had that challenged as a culture.
Yeah, well, I know that I was part of running a company where, there was a massive layoffs taking place. There was an enormous amount of business stress you deal with anyway in life. But when a lot of times in business transitions, you have some control, you can forecast. This literally happened overnight. And so even for people who I knew that handle stress pretty well, or they kind of had outlets, it seemed like there was just this overwhelming sense of guilt I was seeing within the business community, because people were seeing people have to sit home, lay off, furloughed. Some of those companies never really recovered, whereas others thrived, and some felt guilty for even that. But I would imagine that there were a lot of conversations you had with people that, hey, I've never been to counseling, but here I am. Have you seen people that maybe you wouldn't have typically seen in the past? And have you seen those impacts of COVID, even coming from the business community, people who are suffering and having to deal with those realities?
Absolutely. I had clients that I was working with before the pandemic happened, and some that are new during the pandemic. And that has been, for mine personally, now we do have clinicians who work with children, and those are different conversations. But I work primarily with adults, and so a lot of my conversations have been about that, the struggle of how do I keep this business afloat, and this loyalty and love that I have for these employees that have been with me for so long, to want to keep them employed and be able to take care of their families, and really look for some creative solutions to not just keep people safe in their work environment, but also to continue to be able to provide employment for the people that have stuck with them for so long. I've seen a lot of business owners just really take that to heart, and it's beautiful to see that passion and the loyalty that they have for the employees, but it's also can be very heart-wrenching to watch them struggle with making those financial decisions as well. It's taken a toll on the business community for sure.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's really admirable how you were talking about that your clinicians have always been able to do telehealth, but y'all still made that extra effort to allow people to come in, even with the social distancing. Like going on a walk with a therapist, I would have never thought to do that. And, you know, like I feel like that would have been so comforting, especially during those times when you really can't see people. Even if you're across the street, just knowing that that one person is walking with you that really knows how to help you. Was that something? And I mean, obviously not at the very beginning would y'all have been able to do that because you couldn't have been that close. But when did y'all kind of make that decision into that transition? It's like, oh, we can do this. This is still acceptable.
That's the type of thing that's been, oh gosh, maybe something that's always been an option. When I first started out in private practice, that was something that my supervisor at the time introduced me to. Our office was located right next to what's now Moncus Park. And there were times where we would have just kids that had just, you know, lots of energy, and the office wasn't a great space. It wasn't a play therapy office. It wasn't a great space for someone with lots of energy. It was beautiful for adults, but not a rambunctious child. So there were several sessions where I, you know, would walk with an adolescent out to, you know, Moncus Park, and we would throw the football around. So that was be something that was already, you know, in the back of my mind as an option. Some people just don't want to sit. Some people don't sit still very well. And that's okay. There's no rule that says you have to do that. So it's not uncommon to, if you want to, right, you know, to meet with your therapist and say, hey, you know, I'd like to just, can we walk and talk today? You know, there's certain precautions that you take to still, you know, guarantee a person, or not guarantee, but just kind of manage the confidentiality of what's going on. But it can be a really great way to get out of the same four walls, right, the same couch, and see if movement and a change of scenery can bring something new to the surface. So we were able to take advantage of that during COVID and use that more often.
Yeah.
Well, Jessica, you know, when we were talking earlier, prior to even coming on, you were talking about really the amount of time and work you put in with people who are, you know, in drug addiction, or the families of those that are trying to come out of life-controlling substance, you know, abuse. And it was obvious a passion that you have, and I'm sure you helped a lot of people. For those that are kind of, you know, not sure how to even take that step, what's the first step in this process to reaching out and recovery? What would you say to folks that may hear this, you know, this podcast and say, hey, I need to do something? What advice would you give them?
Probably the most important and yet the most difficult thing, you know, there's a saying that says that phone can weigh 10,000 pounds, right? And so picking up the telephone, and if you're not calling, you know, a counselor or a professional in this field, maybe calling someone that you trust who understands what you're going through is just the first step. I don't get to make a lot of guarantees in this work that I do, but this is one that I feel comfortable saying. I think that if you isolate in addiction, or you can replace addiction with, you know, another type of, especially mental health struggle, if you isolate in this, it will win. Right? And so one of the very first and even hardest things to do is just to start to share a little bit about what's going on with someone you trust. Call a counselor. You might be able to find a 12-step meeting that, you know, really relates to what you're going through. And those can be some kind of anonymous first steps that you can do. You can certainly schedule appointments with counselors, and you know, I'm happy to give that information too when you guys are ready for it. But really, that first step is picking up the phone, that 10,000-pound telephone, and sharing a little bit about what's going on so that you get out of the isolation.
Yeah, and you know, having worked in the past with individuals that were struggling with addiction, come out of addiction, even helped with some different homes that were kind of vocational rehab, counseling, different things. It works. Counseling works. Therapy works. So don't be afraid to, you know, reach out to people like Jessica. Look at Jessica. She's not gonna bite you. She's not gonna hurt you. She's a sweet lady. No, but they just need to make that decision to reach out. It's that first step. It's not a hard one because people care, and other people have found freedom. Right? Other people have made that step. And families have been restored. You know, they're walking in freedom from those addictions, right?
And kind of piggyback, Sean. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I said it can certainly happen. You know, there can be a way out. You know, the work can be challenging, but the work is also so very rewarding, even if it's not, related to substance abuse issues. We still have relationship concerns, and we still have, struggles with this pandemic that we're dealing with. And like even kids going back to school right now and making this adjustment of back to school plus back to school with the concerns of a pandemic. It can be very stressful. So have some more people on your side where you'll be able to talk through what you're going through.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Sarah, did you have something you wanted to say real quick?
Yeah, and just kind of piggybacking you saying like taking that first step, the phone can weigh 1,000 pounds. I know a lot of people with their experience, they see one therapist and it's terrible. They do not get along with them. It just wasn't the right fit. So then they're like, yep, nope, therapy's terrible. I'm not doing it. And I'm like, it's not always going to be a one and done. Like, I don't want to say shop around, but it's essentially like making regular relationships with regular friends. Like you can go through or attend 5 different meetings and not be comfortable in the scenario. You can see 5 different therapists before you find the one that you truly trust and are comfortable with. Because until you find that point, like you're not going to be open and honest with people. So I think that's just important to highlight on too. And if you have any advice on that, and like if people are in the realm of looking for a therapist and haven't quite found one that they are comfortable with, what to kind of look for, just how to be open with that, with those feelings when you're already struggling with so much.
I think it's okay to interview, potential therapist. That's something that I do for myself. I do work with someone I need to. Life affects me just as much as it affects someone else. And in fact, this morning I had a consultation call with a prospective client, and I loved that he called me and said, "Hey, can we just spend a little time talking first? I want to make sure that this is the right fit." Mm-hmm. And so you can ask for that consultation and be prepared with whatever questions that you want. I would tell you especially if this is a mental health or a substance abuse concern, to make sure that you are working with a licensed professional for mental health and substance abuse concerns. You can call and ask whatever questions you want. Know that our personalities and our life experiences oftentimes shape the way that we show up in session. And as much as I would love to be able to help everyone, I know that I'm not the right fit for everyone out there, but I'm happy to help you find the person who may be the right fit for you. And that's something that I think a good mental health counselor will take that seriously and not take that personally. I would like to work with the people who are a good fit for me, and then be able to transition you to the person who is, if it's not going to work for me and you. So you can certainly call. You would ask questions about what's the approach? What should I expect in counseling? A question I get often is, do you give homework? Some counselors are very, very passionate about the work that you do outside of the session, and some are very concerned with what happens in the here and now in the session. And both are great approaches. It just depends on what your needs are.
Yeah, and how it's conducive to that person. Because you give one homework and they're like, no, thank you.
Right. Right.
Well, hey, why don't you tell everybody about how can they reach out to you? How can they find you? Give us just kind of direct us in that. And I think we do have some information we'll put on the screen as well.
Okay. So right now, if you want to learn more about us as a counseling practice, you can reach out to us through our email, info@counrec.com. It's COUNREC.com. So that's a great way to get in touch with us, and we can send you lots of stuff there. You can learn more about some of the tidbits of what we do through our social media sites. We're on Facebook, and we're also on Instagram.
Okay.
So you can learn more about there. I would love to be able to say, hey, find us on our website. That's under construction. That's going to be up soon, but that website address is counrec.com, and that'll be launched very, very soon with some updates with our new location.
So whether it's in person, whether it's Zoom, you can do webinar as well if you need to, or Zoom call. Okay, and just kind of give us, because we've talked about different things, some of the services you provide, some of the specialties that you or your associates have. For those that are listening, we talked about addiction. We talked about those kind of issues, family, the impact that has on families. What are some of the other areas that you guys specialize in?
So we can work with, like you said, children all the way through adulthood. We do couples work. We can work with the entire family system. We do have a therapist who is trained in EMDR and some trauma-specific modalities. So I'm pretty excited about that. That's a relatively new offering that we have to be able to specifically address trauma through EMDR. Gosh, there's a lot of different approaches that we can take, but in general, what we do is little all the way through adult, families and adults, and we can take a very specific trauma approach as well.
Very, very good. And you'll have a physical location and office, you said?
We do. The Lafayette office is at 1223 Camellia Boulevard.
Okay.
And our Youngsville office is 2803 East Milton, which is right behind Agave Restaurant.
Okay, yeah, I know exactly what that's at. And so we have additional expansion in mind, or we're just going to kind of see how these locations go? What's your forecast for the future?
So we're having some conversations about possibilities for, what's next for us as a practice. I know that we're continuing to grow and look at the locations that we have now. And, even though we just opened Youngsville on June 1st, we're starting to kind of feel this is getting busy over here too. Do we need to have a conversation about what's next for us? And so we're starting that. We don't have any specifics yet lined up about whether that's, some other part of, the Acadiana area, or if it's going to be some online expansion, but we're definitely talking about it because the need is there.
Wonderful, Jessica. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing with us about your services. Vital, we love partnering with companies in Acadiana that are just serving our community well. We also love talking to companies that they understand the importance of technology. We're a technology company. So if anybody has technology needs or issues for connectivity, running your business effectively in these trying times, maybe there's more of a need for online presence, or you have more people working from home, we definitely want to be able to help with that. But I want to encourage everybody, if you have need of counseling in any form, please reach out to Jessica at Counseling and Recovery Guidance. And thank you again, Jessica, for being with us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for inviting me to be here. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Wonderful.
We enjoyed having you.
Yeah, thank you for serving Acadiana the way you do.
Thank you.
All right.